Mr. Speaker, I think the issues that have been raised, particularly by the opposition spokesman on national security, summarize effectively the views of the opposition, and I would just like to make a couple of additional points. The Minister of National Security made it clear, and I think it bears emphasizing, that the solution to crime generally, to the threat that we have, will involve much more than the institution of special operation zones. And with that, we entirely concur. Obviously, there's need for additional resources, intelligence support, additional police, all of those things he has mentioned. So there's no dispute there. We might agree that there's need for more, but that's not the purpose of this bill. No doubt, all well-thinking Jamaicans would want to see something done to curb the current upsurge in lawlessness in particular communities. And this bill, in some ways, attended to add to the arsenal of tools available to an administration. Legislative amendments certainly have a place in any effort to deal with the crime upsurge. In some sense, although it has been, and in a sense it was suggested by the opposition spokesman on national security, special operation zones have been tried, if not called by that name. Certainly going all the way back to 2005, 2004. Special zones were set up in Denham Town, Hannah Town, and in Painlands, and the security forces were there for going on to 6 months. The procedure used was perhaps cumbersome because what it meant at the time was a repetition of curfew orders and cordons being implemented, and the curfew orders can stand for, I believe it is 72 hours, and then they have to be renewed. So they were being constantly renewed in a rolling kind of process. So to that extent, there can be obvious need for a cleaner, more effective legislative power to provide for a longer duration operation by the security forces. The question that arises then is not whether or not we need the kind of legislative powers that are being provided here, but the question is whether the powers and the processes as contained in this bill are the most effective in respect of balancing between the effectiveness of the fight against armed criminals and the protection of the rights of individuals in these communities. Mr. Speaker, I believe it is always important that a society learns from its own experiences. And there are, we have, I believe, in relation to the matter of electoral administration, the whole society came to the brink of conflict, armed conflict, civil war almost, between adherents of both parties in the period of toward the end of the 1970s. But we learned as a society, and we made the efforts then to put in place an electoral advisory committee to take the direct responsibility for electoral administration out of the hands of the political directorate and to put it into independent hands. And since then, through a lengthy process, the country has pulled back from that brink of politically motivated violence, which almost cast us over the edge and into oblivion. A similar process has affected how we have managed the powers of the security forces. Yesterday, in the debate in the House, the member from St. Catherine Central spoke about her experiences in the state of emergency of 1976. And she spoke, although the speaker is not listening to me. No, he's not listening. Whether he's hearing or not is an entirely different question. Oh, the speaker is now listening. The speaker is now, no, he's the speaker of the House at this point in time. But the reference was to the previous occupant of the chair, who was also detained in the state of emergency. And what arose then in their minds to this day was the suspicion, despite all that has been said by the political administration of the day. No. What arose in their minds is the suspicion, real or otherwise, that the motivation for their detention was political. And that arose because the ultimate authority that exercised it was drawn from one political party, one political persuasion. Another episode in the arising from that, in reforms instituted in the 1990s, the process whereby a state of emergency would be instituted and the political controls, at least as far as parliamentary oversight is concerned were strengthened. Along equally arising from that episode and going on into the 80s and the 90s, there was a suspicion that the security forces were subject to political direction. And that caused doubt, it caused the damage to the reputation of the security forces, it affected trust between populace and the security forces, depending on the community. And quite frankly, we came as a parliament to the meeting of the minds regarding the separation of operational control and direction in the security forces from the policy-making powers of the political directorate. And while, quite frankly, we can't say, obviously, that we have perfect security forces or anything like that, the fact of the matter is that the society has benefited from the perception that operations are directed by the professional cadre leading the security forces, and that they are not subject to the direction of political authority. Mr. Speaker, I cast no aspersions as to motive behind this bill, but I believe that conferring the power to declare a zone as a zone of special operations on the Prime Minister, whoever is the Prime Minister, council or not. That is I dare say that is a distinction without a difference. Right? It is a distinction without a difference. I have, first of all, Mr. Speaker, the National Security Council was instituted, I believe, during the regime of Prime Minister Patterson, former Prime Minister. I have sat in the Security Council, both as Minister of National Security and as Minister of Finance. And for one thing, there is no publication of any minutes. There is inscrutability as far as the general public is concerned about what goes on there. But there is no doubt either, Mr. Speaker, and again, I cast no aspersions. There is no doubt of the overwhelming power exercised by the political component on the council as compared with the officials who serve. Ultimately, their appointment, no, this is a serious matter. This is a serious matter we are discussing. This is a serious matter we are discussing. No, but I need to be heard, Mr. Speaker. No, but it's more than you. I believe if we can find the way to ensure that the decision and the selection of the geographic areas to be subject to this declaration is clearly within the remit of the High Command of the security forces, it would enhance public trust in the measure and in the legislation and the exercise. No, all over, because of the experience of the society of distrust. There is no doubt if you look at any social survey material, not only do we have a low level of public trust in officials, but there is a low level of public trust in political authority. Both sides. Both sides. We therefore don't need to create more suspicion about our motives, because one thing has been said, the Minister of National Security said it, we need the society to unite around the efforts that we are taking. Crime is not going to, when crime overwhelms us, it's not going to overwhelm JLP or PNP, it is overwhelming Jamaica. Our survival as a country depends on us rolling back the tide of criminality. This is not an issue on which you can succeed and we fail, or we can succeed and you fail. This is an issue that requires us to do the right thing. Now, what we believe, and you can argue about the extent, the security forces can declare, if the period suggested in the minority report is considered too limited, extend it. I don't have a problem with a reasonable extension. But ultimately, at a point in time, the Parliament needs to be able to provide for the long extensions. In the original bill, and that was laid, you could, it was 60 days and then another 60, but all that was required was a report to the Parliament. First, 40, right? But what we are suggesting is that after 30, after 21 is in the report, but I could, as I said, we can have a discussion about the timing. Allow the Parliament to exercise its judgment. That would give not only the control to the security forces, but would allow Parliament a supervisory oversight of what would happen. I think also that there is again, the Minister of Justice suggested that he had no problem with the idea of a tribunal, but was not to provide some protection against the citizen. Understand? We can't devise legislation on the assumption that everything will go as we planned it. You can't even plan a trip. That's why we buy insurance, or motor vehicle insurance and other things. Life doesn't go as planned. The danger that we have, again, as the opposition spokesman on national security suggested, is that you face a problem where thousands of police will be at large in the country, not all of them have the same fine appreciation of people's rights, of citizens' rights, or disposition. They are subject to anger, violence, bad mind at times, like all of us as citizens. But when, and quite frankly, Prime Minister, I think you're acting in your protection, because you would not want, when they go into a community and behave excessively, you don't want it coming back to you personally. We really need to put up these tribunals in the bill that would ensure that there is redress and there is more possibility of confidence in the justice coming out of that encounter with the justice of the peace, if it is a tribunal of three, than it is one who people might believe has some either a special disposition to the police or some other action. It's just a simple point of trying to minimize the upset. The point has been raised about military powers and the conferral of police powers on the military. The end result of that is going to be the amalgamation of the two forces. I, for one, believe that Jamaica needs a Jamaica Defense Force with the particular war-making powers and capacities that it has to provide defense. To provide defense. We have seen in the not-so-distant past, drug-running militias invade other countries in the Caribbean. A JDF is an insurance policy for any country. We have to be able at least to stave off any possible attack, incursion by shippers in our maritime space, etc., or drug runners, or gun runners. The training is very different. The disposition and the psychology of each force is different. And whatever concerns, it is one force that has maintained a certain level of insulation against the more corrupting influences in the society. It has remained relatively above these influences. Influence flows in two directions. We have to be very careful about creating this flow that results when the individual officer of the law is in these regular encounters and exercising the powers as an individual. What we have had has worked. Simply put, assign one policeman to a military unit and let them do the policing component of that task. It ain't broke. Don't fix it. I think the final issue that I would commend for consideration, and I don't know if the committee has recommended, detention, and I think the drafters, detention of a citizen in this bill departs from the common law, in that in the common law, what is required is that you're either suspected of having committed a crime. Madam AG, I would love you to hear me. You may be hearing me even if you're not looking, but no. Oh, I know you're not easily distracted. Eh? No, I was making the point about the provisions for detention. Departing from what is usual in the common law and perhaps in bits of legislation, that you can be detained on suspicion of either having, and I believe it is in the Constabulary Force Act, either having committed or being about to commit a crime. The provision here is the wording, and I'm going from memory, is that where it is considered appropriate by the Joint Command. I understand the intention, but I believe that the wording could possibly be tightened further by making it clear that we believe the person to be a threat to the security of the community or of the country in some way, right? So that it is not just so that the boundaries of appropriateness are somehow, yes, right, in that area. But overall, Prime Minister, members of the House, I think that our concern is the same as yours, to find a mechanism that can deal with what is obviously a resurgent criminal problem, in which we can see, as we saw in Montego Bay, armed thugs. It used to be commonplace, and it has been rolled back, but it is now reasserting itself. Armed groups of 20, 15, 10 with AK-47s and M16 running rampant across the country. You don't want it, we don't want it. We understand the need for it to be brought under control, but equally we understand that the long-term solution to the problem will never be achieved unless we are able to maintain and indeed build on the trust between the security forces and the wider population, and that there are dangers lurking to that trust in this legislation. Thank you very much.